talking like this with their microphone up here, and things are not going through. So please, if you have questions, make sure your microphone is in front of you and lean forward. With that, I turn it over to Josh Wright, City Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Okay, maybe you can hear me now. Yeah, I'm on. Looks like we're functioning. Mayor, thanks for the time. Thanks for letting us get together today and have this presentation. It's always exciting for us to be able to take this time of the year to not only look at where we're at through the first 3 quarters of a current fiscal year, but to get into the budget planning process for the upcoming fiscal year. One of the challenges we have is using the current year and the previous years as projections for the next year and the following years when you've got growth. The growth makes it so that there's a hit and miss. You're not sure what your revenues for the current year are going to be, you're not sure what your expenditures are going to be, but you still want to estimate those out. So for this year, we've taken as long as we possibly could to present a draft proposed budget to the council with the hopes of seeing the most accurate level of expenditures and revenues for the fiscal year. One of the things you'll notice when we start looking at our tax statement from Travis County, we still don't have their final version for next year. We don't expect to get that until around the 20th of this month, and that's around the 20th. Maybe they get it to us by the end of August, maybe they get it to us by the 15th or so. But that's one of those things that you wait as long as you can just for our fundamental basics of using general fund. If you don't get it, you use your best case estimates based on the previous years and what you're seeing for their first level of what I would call an iteration that they send out to you on their estimates. So we'll look at that in the document. So we were able to deliver the document to the council yesterday. The document I'm talking to is, what we're speaking about is this right here, fiscal year 2019-2020, proposed budget and budget message. As we say per our charter and just standard operation, we deliver this proposed budget in advance so that the council has an estimated of 60 days to look at the process, look at the numbers, and then to make decisions on the budget for next year and to have time to adopt that budget. In the very back of that budget, you will see the calendar. It is actually the last page of your budget book. That calendar, we set it at the first part of the year. It actually shows you the dates that are coming up. You'll note that today being August 1st, that's when we will have a council meeting tonight to set a few of the dates. You'll see that on the 15th of August, September 5th, and then September 12th, we'll have public hearings on this budget. Although we'll have different items that we put on there per the tax rate, the goal is to have public hearings on all those dates so that individuals from the community can make comment at a public hearing on those dates. If we have a meeting that does not have a budget item on it, we will have it open for community comments. People are encouraged to make comments at any of the meetings that they would like. If someone wants to email comments in or call or come in to meet with any of you guys or meet with us, we'll bring those comments back to council as we compile them just to have community input. We welcome the input. The budget process is a phenomenal experience to go through every year because it allows us to see what we can do and how we're going to grow. And so the more that the community is interactive, the better prepared we'll be for next year. Last comment I'll make is we do have this hard copy available at City Hall and at the library. So if someone wants to come and sit down and review the document, make copies of the document, they can do so at City Hall and at our public library. And the entire document was made available today on the city website. So anyone can access this document, all 139 pages of it, online, print their own copy, bind it, and have a full version just like the council has. We don't make it available to the public until we've provided it and given it to the council. Everyone has it now that wants a copy of it. The goal for today is to walk you through the format, look at the sections, be able to ask some formatting questions, some systematic questions, clarify and then for us to be wrapped up by the 5:30 timeline, so we can go into an executive session. If the mayor decides to keep us longer than that, then we'll make changes accordingly. And then for us to be able, either at the end of this meeting or at the council meeting, to schedule when this body is gonna get back together for the next round of questions, answers, changes, and such. I'll just walk through the basics. If you have questions, just stop me. I'll be looking at you accordingly, and we'll try and answer as much as we can. As soon as you open up the budget document, you get a wonderful title page. It shows you that's what we're looking at. The second thing is you go straight to the table of contents. Table of contents this year is just a little bit different. We've added additional documents this year. So although we split it up so that we cover all 9 funds, and we're talking about all $25 million that we're expecting to expend next year, we've broken it up so that we're looking at different numbers. The challenge with this, with the budget process and what we've done, this year has 3 fiscal years included in it. For everyone listening, the council will approve the budget for FY20, and that's the only budget the council will approve is the FY20. The reason we go out to FY21 and FY22 now is so that we can look at forecasting. One of the things you're gonna see is, when we look at that CIP budget, although it's gonna have $7+ million in projects for FY20, if you keep looking at the next 4 years, then there's another 8 million, 12 million, 9 million. These numbers all can keep happening. So what you want to be able to do is look at the operating budget as compared to the capital improvements program, so that we understand how we're going to be funding those things moving forward. It's great throughout the year when we make a fantastic statement of, we're going to resurface 12 roads, we're going to resurface Boggy Ford, we're going to replace water and sewer lines. Thing is, we still have to pay for those. And so we have to be able to show those dollars in the balancing act as we're moving forward. So on that table of contents, you're gonna see, the first thing we're gonna flip to is a foreword. I added a foreword this year so that it just tells people, as you're reading through the budget, you may see numbers that are written numbers that may not compare directly to what's in the consolidated statement and the included budget. The actual numbers that matter at this point, until council changes that, are the numbers that are in consolidated statement and the departmental budgets. That's what's important. The things that are in the budget message and the written words, those are, at one point, those were the numbers we were using, but as we're developing out the budget, some of those may change by $100, $1,000, smaller numbers, not enough to offset the apple cart as we're going through the document. And unfortunately, the budget document and the message are not tied together with lines, so that if you make a change in one, it's going to change the words on another, because it just wouldn't handle the math. So we'll start out with that, with the foreword, then we go into a budget message. So if you turn that page over to page number 2, that's the foreword. Then you go straight into page number 3. You're getting into a budget message. This gives you the guidance for the document that you're going to be reading. We'll just shut a couple doors. You may not have noticed that the air is not working as efficiently as we want it. We get to one page here where it says we may need some dollars for buildings. That's kind of what we're talking about. But we'll shut the doors on that side. We need to leave this door open just for public meeting requirements. So if you can't hear me, I'll talk louder as we get to there. So when we start on page 4, this gets you to the budget message. What our goal is for that message is to just get people thinking about the thought processes behind how we're building a budget. If you're reading it every year, eventually you're going to see the thought process that we put in as staff to what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish a couple things. The first thing is efficiency and effectiveness. Those go hand in hand, and we want to streamline the day-to-day operations of what we're doing. Our goal is to operate a lean, effective city team. That's the overall. Then the second level of that is to make sure that we're reducing our debt obligations. You're going to see in this document, as of the end of this year, we're going to have $33 million in long-term debt. That $33 million is paid over the full life of each of those debt obligations will equate to $47 million. $47 million, $33 million, either way you look at it, that's a lot of money. And it's money that we're going to have to pay over the course of 20 years or so. As we add on new debt, we're going to increase that number. No matter how you look at it, if you think that the long-term debt's a good thing or a bad thing, or you're indifferent, it's still obligations, henceforth the name, that we're going to have to pay for in one way or another. One of the things you're going to see throughout this budget is maintaining that tax rate at 65 cents per $100 valuation. That is, I think we decided this would be the 7th year in a row with the same tax rate. There could be some changes next year or even 2 years based on the state legislature in terms of how they see the taxing abilities of local governments. But that has nothing to do on the proposed budget that we have this year. The document in front of you lays out plans for street improvements, growth improvements, and operating to provide levels of service that are in line with what we're seeing in our population. So that page 4 is going to start you out with the basic number review. It is quick and as fast as you can see it. It'll show you that the FY16 numbers, FY17, FY18 numbers, that'll give you a total budget, general fund, utility fund, and it'll show those fund balances. Fund balances can be discussed as reserve accounts for those funds, but basically what that is, it's our savings account for each fund. We focus a lot on the fund balance reserves for utility fund and for general fund. Those are our two main operating funds from the day-to-day operations, so we want to look at those numbers and keep those in the back of our mind, because historically what they were called were rainy day funds. Then it came out to be, it's more than rainy day funds, it's your capital dollars that you have to use in order to make your systems better. And so we need to be mindful that the fund balances are our means of a livelihood moving forward. When you get on to page 5, you're going to briefly hit the current fiscal year review. So that just tells you where we're at on some of the things that happened during this FY19. When you get over to page 6, you're going to see how that impacted the end of the year estimates are going to impact our reserves. And then as you touch into page 7, it gives you just an idea of what we're looking at for the basics of FY20. There's a couple quotes included throughout this budget about our vision, basically because, as I've said before, the vision for our community is the foundation for how we're going to make things happen. If we can all get to a point where we at least agree which direction we're heading, then it's easier for us to start planning some of these things that we're going to take over in the course of a year. I think an easy thing for us to say is if we polled 8,046 citizens in the city of Lago Vista at this time, maybe 8,000 of us would agree that street improvement somewhere is a good project. It may be hard to find another topic that is as easy to get support behind, but you'll see that, and that's why you'll see in this document, you'll see the street departmental budget increased, you'll see an added street employee, and you'll see the capital projects line item for street repairs increased. Why? Years ago, City Council said, let's start putting money into streets. 2 years ago, City Council said, let's put money into streets. Last year, City Council said, let's put money into streets. My only assumption in this entire budget is City Council's going to say, hey, why don't we repair some streets? If you change it, we'll take it all out, put it somewhere else. Maybe build a helipad or something. But until then, in this budget, you have street improvement and you have a desire by staff to say, let's collectively hit as many streets as we can in a manner that is still allows for general flow of traffic in our community. Unlike larger cities that do not care about blocking streets up for as long as they can, including I-35, our desire is that we repair streets and then move away to an area where we're not cluttering up the same area of town over and over. So if we're working on Highland, we still want to leave traffic to be able to flow through Highland. If we're working on Thunderbird, as we were a few weeks ago, we still want to move traffic through Thunderbird so people can get in and about their house. And that's what we'll see when we get back to the street improvement plan, looking at some of these numbers, and that's the kind of mindset I want us to think about. So as we move on through over to page 9 and page 10, same kind of things. At the bottom of page 10, you're going to see the approximate debt obligation of $33.789 million. You'll also see a sentence that says, over the past 10 years, we've never fallen below 20 million. And again, that conversation is, do we want to go below 20 million in city debt, or do we feel that keeping a healthy debt obligation is something that we want to focus on? And that's just one of those things that, council-wise, you've got to make that decision and decide how we move forward. The good news is, when you get over to page 11, you have a little section on the challenges that we face. Pretty simple. I give you the Cliff Notes version of that. Growth, demand, providing services to handle the existing level and all the growth. You know, the things we want, this is where we've got to start hitting it. If we're looking at last year, the discussion was, do we need to aggressively look at economic development? Council said, yes, we need to look at economic development. Henceforth, that man sitting right back there, he has a department, he's got an economic development advisory council, and we have an economic development director. So it was said, it was done, and he's been working for 6 months or so now, trying to make these things happen. That's how we aggressively and effectively want to define a problem and address the problem. So at the end of that, you see that 11 pages, you're already through reading the general budget message with some basic ideas. Questions on that section? It's a fantastic read. If you've not read it yet, definitely read it 2 or 3 times. No one has ever agreed with that section, by the way, but it's fun to ask somebody to read it. When you get into page 12, this is the fun part. Page 12, page 13, and page 14. Let me rephrase it. It's fun if you like to see growth. If you do not like to see growth, then shut your ears for a few minutes. This is the Travis County Appraisal District's estimate for total property valuations. You're going to see, this is an estimate right here. This is not their official document for the year, but this is the most recent estimate provided to us on July 24th. You're going to see that the 2018 certified net taxable base, so what we list as our total property valuation, was at $924 million. That's higher than 2018, obviously, or the 17-18 number. The 2019 preliminary, 1.063 billion. That is the first time officially that number 1 billion has occurred in the city of Lago Vista. We projected this out almost 2 years ago that we were going to exceed $1 billion, and we were in the 700 million range at that time. We're spot on. We knew it was going to happen here within a couple of years, and it happened within that time frame based on the development that we're seeing each and every week, based on every single house and every development that's coming through the books. That next line, you're going to see the estimate of what they predict we will lose off of that number based on the total number of protests. There's 7 of you guys sitting there, for example. On average, 2 out of 7 are going to protest, and theoretically, let's say the 2 win, you're going to take out $5.8 million of that total valuation. This number is significantly lower than last year's and the year before's and the year before. So I would still say there's a little leeway. I would personally say it may still go up to 20 million, but if that's where they feel, then 5 is a pretty good number. Then right below it, another important line to look on this page, you're going to see the new value added during the year. That's $62.3 million. That's your new construction. So any other growth is going to come from valuations. So a change in the valuations of properties. This is all brand new property. And so that's that number that you need to monitor throughout the year, because we don't budget for that type of growth, even though we expect that 10% growth window. We just don't put it out there. We're saying that, hey, we expect now that there's going to be anywhere from 230 to 300 homes built in Lago Vista, but this is what their number is for the previous year. And so we work that, if you take that $1.058 billion and then multiply that out by the existing tax rate of 65 cents per 100, then you get what our economic revenue base is for our ad valorem tax. I saw a pin there, so someone wanted to know that number. Let me just tell you. My apologies, I didn't write that down yet. That's $6.8 million. That's your estimated revenue off of that number, should it come in at that point. So remember, that would be what we use on our general fund and our debt service virtually. That's the number we look at. If you switch over to page 13, that's gonna show you the certified totals for 2018. That'll give you that breakdown. You'll see halfway down that page on the right side of the column, it's gonna say net taxable. That's at $924 million. That's certified. The others are estimates for the upcoming year. That's certified what the year ended at. You switch over to page 14, you're gonna see that 17 ended the year at $804 million. So from that jump from 804 up to 924, up to $1 billion. You know, that's the level of growth that we're currently seeing. We'll say it again, we don't expect this level to continue forever, but what we have seen is, while we're watching the same type of growth in Austin, Round Rock, Cedar Park, Georgetown, Leander, then we know that as we state, we're kind of a tertiary impact on the growth and development wave. Austin being the primary, Georgetown, Cedar Park, Round Rock being the second level, and then Leander used to be that third level. And so although they're growing, we feel that we're in that same third level as what Leander's in. So as long as you've got growth happening in Austin, we know it's gonna push it out to our region. And if you put it all the way back to Reaganomics, it's still that trickle-down growth and development.
Can I make a comment real quick?
As long as it's not about Ronald Reagan.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, when you're talking about these net taxable values, 924 and 804, from my numbers, this shows our property value has gone up roughly about 8%. So without the city changing their tax rate at all, the citizens of Lago Vista have seen an 8% increase in their property values. So,
Great point. And that's the challenge that the community's having to look at is you're still seeing taxes go up effectively. You're just not seeing the tax rate move. So there's value to property owners because, hey, you got more equity, as we like to say. The downside is, hey, you got to pay for that equity, and it's going to cost you. And so those pages are very important. Those are the tax values that I want you to look at. And then when we get to that 10-year financial statement, you'll see those compiled, and we'll hit that here in a few minutes. So as you shift over to page number 16. Page number 16 is a really fun page because it tells us what we're working with in terms of how the revenue line is looking at the end of the day. You've got three columns here. You've got a column that shows fund balance as of 9/30 of 17. The next column over is the fund balance as of 9/30/18. And then the final column is the estimated fund balance as of 9/30/19. So it's representing fiscal year 17, fiscal year 18, fiscal year 19. You'll see at the end, this includes all 9 funds that we account for. As of 17 and 18, there wasn't an aviation fund listed. We do have that fund listed at the end of 19 since we had it. We went from the 8 funds to the 9. At the end of 17, you're going to see a cash balance, cash on hand of about $12.6 million. When you look over to 18, you're going to see $13.1 million. And then when you go to 19, it's an estimated $14.6 million. So the good thing is there's a cash balance there that is healthy. If we're estimating 8,000 people in this community, with the capital improvement projects that we have, we're still moving that cash balance number up. Every monthly statement gives you a cash balance page. It starts out. What STAR does is she lists out all these funds on the first page, and then at the bottom of that page, it shows you cash on hand. The beauty of that is, if at any point we need to do a project, whether it's an emergency project, a well-planned project, or just a whatever project, we go to that page that was updated for the previous month, we look at that account, and we say there are X number of dollars there. That's updated every single month, typically by the 15th of the following month. We look at that, we see this number. I believe right now, if you look at it, it may say 15, 16 million on it, may. It's in the book somewhere. That's the value for us to know that even if we're putting more money into these capital projects, we're still maintaining the fund balance level where it was over 2 years ago. So we're not spending these dollars going in the opposite direction. A lot of times we say if we're putting money into these projects, that means we're spending down that cash reserve. We're not doing that. When we get to the fund balances, you'll see the same thing. We're still building those fund balances because we know we have bond potential capital projects that are going to need money going towards them. One great example of that is we're trying to build this fantastic city park. A fantastic city park, what at some point people thought was $1 million park, somehow found a way to jump to 1.7, then to get to 3.4, and once it becomes more fantastic with all the amenities the community wants, it's $4 or $5 million state park. If anyone went over to Arkansas Bend and heard what they said that project cost, I believe they were up to 8 million, and then it was going to be 17 million, and I don't even know what it costs now because the millions just kind of make you block your thought process. But every little thing costs. These dollars that are on page 16 are where we're going to tap from to make it happen. One of the items on the agenda tonight is actually asking council to move the funds into that park fund so that we have that reserve set up. Right now, that park fund will show you $22,000 or so, 22.2 at the end of 18. If we put the additional dollars in there to satisfy the grant match, then that fund will show 602,000. General fund reserve will be minus 580,000. So that's that. It's a shell game, but it's an appropriation game that the council makes the decision to move those funds into that item to basically earmark them for those services. You'll notice a couple other funds on here. The joint utility fund, again, baby steps. You build that fund up to that point. I've said it over and over again, it would be nice to have a general fund and a utility fund that have 100% reserves. Why do I say that? Because fiscally, financially, security, it's just great to have it because something's going to happen. We know that's going to happen. However, on a general fund side, if we can get that to stay around 50%, that's amazing. If we can get the utility fund up to 50, 60%, that's also amazing. And it's just one of those things that'll give us more financial flexibility moving forward if we can build those numbers. So you'll be able to look at these and compare them to previous years to see how those are moving on another page. You'll see the hotel fund estimated at the end of next year, it could end up at about $500,000. There's value there because there are other uses that can happen with that fund as we grow as a community. The construction fund, that's going to be the dollars that you have for your capital projects. We want to see that number going down because we want to see that we're spending all the dollars out of the bonds, meaning we're completing those projects. Our challenge now is to complete the bond projects that we have on the books so that we can think about the next round of projects. If we don't complete the projects that have been sitting there, then there's no reason to do new projects. It's a pretty simple concept. We need to finish it up. Yes, sir.
Is everything in a construction fund bond money then?
At this point, it still is bond money.
Okay.
And we see when we're looking back at the CIP, what we're going to see is if approved, some of these items are going to have general fund, utility fund, impact fees going into there. But we use that construction fund to make sure that we're tracking these projects and we keep that history from start to finish. And that's the goal. We want to be able to track everything all the way through. The impact fee fund's another fund I want you to always pay attention to. Remember, impact fees are used for expanding your utility systems, your water and your wastewater systems. What happens is when someone does a new project, they tap into the water and wastewater system, therefore they make an impact on the overall capacity that you have available. So for them to have capacity, they're buying space on a line. Their dollars we set aside until it's time to build a larger service area, a larger treatment plant, or a larger distribution system. Those are for some of those capital projects. We go back to these funds. The numbers you see there, the 3.4 million estimated, that's the water and wastewater combined for the impact fees. If we continue getting development at the rate we're getting now, you'll see that happening consistently. If the development slows down, the impact fees go away because there's no one to pay them unless you just find somebody randomly on the street that wants to pay $5,000 or $6,000 to impact something. The debt service fund, those are basically just residual dollars from when we pay and potentially any interest dollars that are there. At some point, we could save up enough that pays an extra payment or that does something magical. But that's the fund set aside, so we move the dollars into that fund to be able to pay that debt. On the bottom of that, page 16, you just have a couple of examples for those funds. But the goal is, anytime it's here, placed into a fund, that's earmarked for that fund. I.e., very simple, aviation, park, general, once those dollars are there, we'd like to leave them there and not transfer them to something else unless there's a project. Yes, sir.
I'd like to point out to the listening audience what these fund balances mean to our debt service. By having these fund balances and being able to fund any projects that is debt service debts that no bonds, no additional debt that we're having to take out in the future. So as we pay down our debt, which is at 33 million, we won't be increasing it. So.
A great example on that, Mayor, I already used the park as one of those projects. The reason we phase out that park is because we don't want to leave grant money on the table. We've talked about this before. The challenge there is if our team can secure $500,000 for every phase of the project at a minimum, that's a huge benefit. So far, we've had 2 phases. So far, we have 2 $500,000 grants. If we chose not to go that avenue, we would be paying $1 million out of pocket. To be honest with you, we probably wouldn't even be thinking about the project. Now, we're trying to move forward and get this to actually happen. But without that $1 million, it doesn't happen. And so as we move forward, we're looking for other funding sources that could potentially help us make that project come to fruition. Another project that we're going to see in a second is a potential build out behind me for the library and or a potential city hall extension or add-on. For those funds, if council approves any type of extension, those would happen out of the earmark money that's already set aside for new city hall. That shows every month that number, which we have it down as town center facility, that stays earmarked. That's on the bottom of every page, every month, first page of your financial statement. Let me clarify that. Those dollars are set aside. If council decides to appropriate those funds for this development, it's there. It's not a bonded project. It's not a loan project that we're going to go out and get. We would, just like the mayor said, be able to tap into those dollars that are sitting in another fund balance. So I hope that makes some sense. Questions on that? Okay. We're going to switch over to 17. 17 starts 17 is the last general kind of comment. This just gives you a breakdown of the total dollars at one point that we had for the general fund budget, and it gives you the breakdown of percentages for what we're doing. The beautiful thing about this is it gives you that idea of where are we spending dollars now, and in the future, where do we need to spend dollars? You'll see some challenges, and you'll know that as our population grows, we need to ensure one of the best values of being in a small community is need to ensure safety. So you look at the dollars that we have into our police department now, including have dispatch, and we know we need to continue moving at the rate that the population is moving. Those are the challenges of if population jumps by another 1,000 in a year, what does that mean? Does that mean a police officer? Does that mean 2 police officers? Does it mean school resource officers? It really depends community by community. We can pull up these studies throughout the year and show you what national research shows per capita, per square mile, but it really goes back to what our department's doing, what our calls are, what our response times, and how effectively are we keeping our people safe. And as we're developing out budget and as we're seeing our revenue streams change, what we want to do is earmark revenue streams for services. So that one thing we've said, for example, is for economic development, as we see our sales tax go up, that's how we grow our economic development activities. The sales tax will be over $500,000 this year. The franchise tax will be over $500,000. Theoretically, the sales tax could provide for parks and recreation and economic development. That would be a beautiful way to plan out as we get deeper into developing out a budget and a long-term plan. At this point, all the revenues go into one pot and then they're divvied back out to the individual departments based on the need that we're getting internally and based on our moving of items around. But what we'd like to see is that distribution plan moving forward. How do we fund growth, development, requests for services? So you just see those percentages. They're put over there, the rounded numbers, and then the budgeted numbers, so you see the overall breakdowns. Okay, on to the next, on page 18. 18 through almost page 36. These are all white paper, individual item review processes. If you look at 18, this is an employee pay plan proposal. This shows the same as we would present it last year, same way we present it next year. It shows a request for a COLA increase for employees and a potential merit increase for employees. This one will show you that pulling out the COLA for the year based on the urban wage earners, I think our number's 1.8%. That'd be the middle paragraph, starting with the COLA for FY20. The May 2019 shows 1.8% is the cost of living adjustment. We don't randomly pick that number. We don't say, hey, we really think that COLA should be 4% or 1%. We pull it straight out of the urban wage earners. Directly pull the number from. Then we look back and see what the potential for a merit increase could be. We use that number based on surrounding regional numbers of what people are looking at other than Travis County. If you look at Travis County's numbers, theirs just blow your mind. They're just throwing money at people, including their council or their board of judges.
Commissioners.
County
Commissioners Court, that's the name now. So it's not a backhand comment to them, it's just a fact of what we've projected out here is what local governments are doing within our region based on here. So that max available in this proposal would be 1.8% cost of living. That would go to every single employee on the first pay period of October 1st. Any cost of living approved by the council would be enacted on the first pay period, first full pay period in October. Then the merit increases, the potential merit increase is based on two things now. Before, you would just roll in a number and say, this is what the employee increase would be. What this number does is it gives you, at the 2.2%, anyone receiving an excellent eval would receive 2.2%. Anyone getting a good evaluation would receive 1.1%. Anyone having a satisfactory evaluation wouldn't receive an increase. Anyone below good would receive a employment improvement plan and have to achieve improvement in order to remain employed. So it's a complete merit-based system. When we implemented this last year, the question was, well, how do you handle that with supervisors? You get a system on merit where people just give out excellent evaluations because they like their people and they think they should just give it to them. Well, you implement it very easily. You evaluate your supervisors and department heads based on how they evaluated their employees. So theoretically, if someone was gaming the system and gave their 10 employees excellent evals, and I didn't think that their employees were all excellent, then I could give them a below average or average evaluation, then they would be impacted by it. Same thing if the way I would do mine, and then the council say the same versus how I look at them. You would evaluate me based on my inability to effectively evaluate our employees.
What were those breakdowns?
It's 1.1% for good and 2.2% for excellent. Last year, the two total numbers, as I put in the paragraph above, that was a total of 5% max, with 2.6% being the COLA and 2.4% being the merit. What we're seeing the difference in the cost of living adjustment this year, fuel prices, the change in fuel prices, and in some commodity changes. You know, as those values go down, our prices at the grocery store go down, the rental and mortgage prices, interest rates go down, that all impacts this factor.
And our max for this year was?
For the current year was 5.0.
Okay.
Yeah, so the proposal for next year is a 4.0. You'll see on the bottom of that page, if that was approved and everyone had an excellent eval, then the impact on the general fund would be $137,000. Impact on utility fund would be $65,000. Impact on golf fund, $23,000, for a total of $226,954. Questions on that one?
Have we looked at the idea of not going with percentage-based COLAs and raises?
We have. We've
Just going, because
Discussed it.
we all spend our money the same way in the same town, and it just seems so unfair to me. So you look at our lowest paid city employee, they're down in the 20,000 range, and the top of the food chain is making 5 times that, so then your raise would be 5 times the raise of the person on the bottom. And I just don't, I know it's the way we've always done business. I think it's time to start changing some of that.
Yeah, and I don't think I never think it's the way we always do business. I believe in the system established based on the responsibilities of the person and the impact of that. But if council says, hey, let's do it as a dollar figure, a lot of communities have done that in the past, and I would say it's worked effectively. So, I think there's a value there.
So we can look at the total number that we're gonna apply to those potential raises and see other ways to spread it out.
Yes, sir. If you want to ask me to look at it, we'll write it down of how we want to evaluate it, and by the next time we meet, I'll have a report ready for council to look at it that way. Okay, the next page, and then we're moving. So the next page is really important. It's page 19. It says staff changes. There are effectively 10 staff changes that we're proposing in this budget. The first would be to add a police officer. The second would be a dispatch officer. The third is a part-time utility service representative. The fourth is a street labor position. And the fifth would be a Parks and Recreation Department director. Those are 5 proposed new positions that you don't have currently as we stand here today. That's what we're requesting to add. If you go down to the next section, these are 5 changes to current operations. So not necessarily a new position that would be unfunded, but funding a change within that position. The first being taking a customer service rep at the golf course to a marketing coordinator. The second would be changing the assistant public works director to a graduate engineer position. The third would be changing our court clerk to the court administrator position. The fourth would be making a utility laborer into a crew leader. And then the fifth would be a change to municipal judge, which would be an hourly rate of pay for the municipal judge position. Currently, we have 3 municipal judges that are all attorneys and that only make $100 a month, $100 a quarter. There you go, $250 a quarter. Just comes from the heavens. You just have to ask it long enough. It's amazing. So it's a volunteer position that really just covers some of their travel, and we are requesting and recommending that we would change that hourly for that position. So that's 10 changes total, 5 being new, 5 being changes to existing operations. All of the ones on the changes are already funded for the majority of the position, except for the municipal judge. That would be a totally new funding source going into that position. I say that, I mentioned that we have 3 attorneys as judges because I want everyone to be able to understand we are incredibly somehow blessed to have these people that volunteer their time to be municipal court judges. This year, if you recall, one of our municipal court judges moved away and another person stepped in and said, I would love to help out. They can only give so many hours and they do a fantastic job of giving their hours.
Do we know how many hours they give?
We do. I estimated on the sitting presiding judge about 20 hours a month. And so that's where we put that number out there to say that it's another page over here, but 20 hours per month from that position.
Got it.
Next page, I briefly hit this one earlier. This is a library expansion and city hall expansion. The first request here is money for the library expansion. This is our priority. If you told us to prioritize one item over the other, then we would prioritize the library expansion over a city hall expansion, because the library has a need for growth and program services. One of the things they did a few years ago at the end of 2015 was they did a full analysis of current services, population growth, and how do they provide for services. They ended up with some small additions, but what you've seen, almost everybody in this room has probably gone to their addition, which is the fire department bay, and been in a community meeting. That community meeting could have been something where you were meeting with a group. You could have gone to a puppet show. You could have gone to a poetry reading. You could have made a quilt. Who knows what it was, but that's a multi-purpose community room. If the library had an addition, not only would they be able to take over that section for a real children's section, for a maker space, for a computer area, and for a quiet space. Right now, there's not really a quiet space located in the library unless you get to go behind a closed door when they're not using another space. This would be creating that space so that you could go and do your research, your work in an area that you know is not going to be impacted by a runaway lizard or a child throwing a ball. And those spaces are valued, especially as our population increases and we see the need for more community activity. The most recent children's program at the library was overflowing with people. This was an animal venture. Was overflowing with people down the hallway into the bathroom, out the doors, and into the main library because these people were so excited to see the programming. That's what we want, but we need spaces. There are these things called fire code, and there's these laws that say do not pack people into a room because it's not safe. We would love to see that type of community support for everything we're doing, but at least we get it for community activity. There's a general estimate for a 70 by 70 building with a build out that would be estimated $250,000. That will not include furniture in there, but it will get us a room and a build out so that there's a space, and then we would potentially look at grants to fill up the room. That's how it happened a few years ago. They received a $50,000 grant for equipment, supplies, partitions of the sort. And talking with Jan, she feels confident that there are avenues out there that we can tap into. What we'd like to see on both of these is the ability to extend behind me a 30 by 100 building that would connect to the library extension and create 3 meeting spaces from an extended walkway from the way we came in today on the side over to that library building. Then we would effectively take this council chambers, this measurement of a council chamber, shift it into the first new meeting space and create partition conference walls so that, in theory, if we had this room packed with the 72 to 77 people that we have on our fire code, then we would take this partition wall behind out, then we would double the capacity. And then in theory, if there was that many more people, we would take the next partition wall out and we would triple the capacity of the existing room. Then any space in here would then be turned into any type of office space for any kind of growth that we would do. That would focus everything inside of this town center complex still here, which is some of the things that we heard from our community. And then if there's a long-term look at what we need to do, then we could start looking at long-term build-out options and opportunities. So there's 2 things here on our request. The one being for the library expansion. It would basically make the library look like a U circle. It would still keep the middle space. There's a word for that.
Courtyard.
Thank you. There's a courtyard. It would still keep the courtyard, and then it would give us added space on both sides of that courtyard U. And then if we did the addition for City Hall, that would connect to that building and then connect over to here, and we would enter council chambers or that area using the existing sidewalk. We would still leave 3 rows of trees in the middle and have a green space and a area for gathering here in this town center area.
Do we have drawings of this?
We do have basic drawings. But what we would like to do is if council gave a go-ahead, we would like to go ahead and put forth more effort to put together the drawings. And we would go out and more than likely just do a design build and start getting the bids, then bring the bids back to council. If the bids are good, we take them. If the bids aren't good, then we go back and figure out a different plan.
So the bid we've seen for the library expansion at $250,000, is that an actual bid or is that an estimation?
No actual bids.
Okay.
Those are two ads, basically from two different contractors that are just ballpark estimates walking the property.
And is this room 30 feet wide? Is that what
This
you,
one is 30, wall to wall, that one goes 30. And that's what we were saying, if we shift that over, you effectively get 3 of these in that area over there, 33.
and we could consider keeping all this instead of tearing it down and rebuilding it over there. We could just knock out this wall and add that way.
We could. The challenges I hear from not only architects and engineers and from the builders is building from the existing structure onto the other structure and trying to make it seamless may create more of a challenge. But if we design build it, then we can have estimates come in and say they feel comfortable doing that, and they don't, they can give us prices. So I think that's a value. If we did move forward, we would then actively bid the project. The problem is, we don't want to bid it until we know the council feels good about it, so that we don't generate confusion or.
And when we built that, would we build it tall enough to incorporate a second story if the future needed offices upstairs, or?
We could, it would just impact the cost of development.
I've just always understood that it's more cost effective to go up than it is to sprawl.
Depends on how solid we build the bottom. We're definitely not trying to build a Taj Mahal, but I agree with you. The more space for the future, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, next page, page 21, short-term rentals. I'm gonna go faster through some of these things because I want us to be able to read them and we're still to that point. Short-term rentals, we don't have a real effective system for managing those short-term rentals. We do know that we have a very effective short-term rental program in our community, that being those people that want to put their properties on either a VRBO, put them online, have a management company manage them. But this is a company that we've talked to that has said they can monitor that, manage that, and more than likely, as we've talked to a couple companies, the money that they bring in that is an increase would pay for their services every year. So whereas we end up with $130,000 in revenue in 1 year, if they come in, they're able to track down, send notices out, be more effective online. We do not spend any time now tracking who lists their house on VRBO, on Craigslist, on Facebook for rent. We just really go through a process of hoping that we're staying in communication through our development services department, that people are getting permits and it's being enforced, and then they're paying their hotel tax virtually. So that's one of the things that we want council to consider. We would go to the same thing. We would look back at a couple options, bring them back, and we'd make a good recommendation.
I have a question about this. This is lodging revs. Would this outfit be able to discover people that are renting that aren't necessarily taking permits
That would
out?
be the basis of what they do
Okay.
initially. So for their first year, they would do a lot of discovery.
Okay.
As they've explained to us, for their second year, it's more of the management things. They also handle, they give us a device or a module, whereas it may be a little more efficient for us seeing out enforcement violations, where we communicate back to them and then they send it out digitally, and so the letter goes out a lot quicker, so that our own development services and code enforcement wouldn't have to expend the time putting forth the documents and sending it, mailing it, and receiving it. So it's 2 years. We put in there a 3-year plan just based on their proposal they, sent to us. We would do the same with any company.
Yeah, thank you.
Page 22 is a city widget and a mobile app. We still think that a mobile app is going to be one of the best ways for this community to get information disseminated. I think that we see with Facebook and other things online that we have people that are interested and that communicate online often. If we had an app so that the majority of us that carry one of these wonderful cell phones can push notifications out, just like today where we're sending out notifications online, we would be able to push those notifications crazy fast. We could be sitting in a meeting and send it out, and then hopefully everyone, while they're sitting here listening, pulls up their phone and says, oh, look, they're talking about the budget, we can still get there today, or we're gonna have public hearings on the 15th and the 12th, and then they're gonna vote on the 19th. That's our challenge, is how do we get information out? And we constantly hear that from people because we hear it from ourselves. This would be the same thing where if council says, yes, let's move forward, we get a couple proposals, we bring them back, we set a contract and bring that back to council. Page 23, seemingly some of these are simple, but we want to see that we're investing in these projects. This is something called tennis court resurfacing. Just like every other capital improvement, if you don't manage it over time, it has issues. Imagine you're hitting a tennis ball, you're hitting a winning shot, and it hits a crack, and you lose. Just horrible day. We have 2 sets of tennis courts that I think are great. We're getting more use now, and they need repair. Here's 2 numbers that are 2 separate courts. Here's the number showing full repair on one, 40,000, full repair on the other, 42,000. We just need to think about these things so we can actively get in. The tennis courts at the golf course now have pickleballers. There's a group of potentially, I think 48 now, and then daily players, there's 6, 10, 15 that are playing pickleball. There's a need here. There's a growing group of tennis players again. There's a need. What do? Well, we need to either invest in those things to improve them, or just go ahead and put a tree there and make green space. So we want you to look at these. We gave some options, and we'll, like I said, we'll circle back on all of these white pages. We'll circle back in a meeting, and council will say, yeah, let's go with that, or no, let's not. And then we'll make sure the numbers are accordingly into the document. And hopefully, that will be the next meeting.
Does that mean that the white pages that you've described are not in the department budgets yet?
Most of the white pages are not in the department budget. Each white page should tell you if the number's included in the budget or not included in the budget.
Okay,
So as we go to page 24, that's the Parks and Recreation Department. This last line on the very bottom shows that an estimated impact on the general fund at $85,000. It says these expenses would be paid out of general fund, and then before there should be somewhere that says, middle of the page, this request has been included in the draft budget. We just need to highlight those lines, and so you know. And so if council says, take that out, then it's easy. We just minus, take it out,
Right.
there's $85,000.
I don't think I understand yet, pardon me. The white pages, up to at least now page 24, they're not in your proposed department or fund budgets. So these would all be added to the budget, so to speak.
Not all. They're not all ads. So even before that page,
Yeah.
the employee merit and COLA,
Yeah,
those are already in at
Okay.
4% max. The the staff changes, that's also a white page. Those are included in. The library expansion in City Hall, that's a capital.
yeah, we can get, all right.
Yeah, and so we'll hit them.
We'll get 'em later.
individually,
Yeah.
And then we'll say, hey, how will this impact? Will it,
Yeah.
is it already in?
Yeah.
Will it be an ad or a
Yeah.
minus is what it is.
Okay.
But this Parks and Recreation is already in the
That's
budget.
in there.
That's in the budget.
And that comes, that's the request coming from the Parks and Recreation Advisory.
Yeah.
The same thing we did last year with economic development.
Yeah,
And so we
Yeah.
got that ahead in time, we have the number, we put it over there.
gotcha.
What the crux of this position is, being able to manage what we have now by taking those responsibilities away from effectively Eric and Roy, who are handling those operations, and put them into a centralized person. The second part of that is actually developing a Parks and Recreation system. Right now, we operate Veterans Park out of there, we operate some of our community spaces out of there, and we have our swimming pool out of that area, we have our tennis courts, but they're piecemeal. They're one person in parks effectively, and then street crew, utility crews, doing some work when they get to do those activities. What this request is that you would actually develop out that system. I explained before to people that the recreational side does not have a comprehensive approach at this point. As you remember, this year we had 27 baseball and softball teams, and very rarely do we get them cohesively speaking together to figure out how to use what was 2 fields, what is now 6 fields, to figure out how our kids are going to be able to play baseball and softball. If you can't practice on a field, and you can't really play on a field, we can't expect our kids to learn how to throw a ball, catch a ball. If you don't care about that, great, don't care about it. But if we care about recreation, at some point, we have to take an effective change. And it's not as extreme as that. It's just, we make that decision. Is the cost worth the benefit? Yes or no, we move forward. And so at some point, we're gonna have to decide to develop out those programs so they're more effective. That's just a little more cost. Well, that's the same cost as doing 2 tennis courts, so crazy how the numbers work out.
Josh, I have a question. When I was reading this part of the report, the question came to my mind about Bowden Point. Is that considered a city park?
That's city property, yes, sir.
I know it's city property, but do we consider it a park?
I'll say it's a city park.
Okay, thank you.
Unofficially, I'll say it's a city park.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a green space.
Yeah.
And our Parks Department does work on it, and KLVP does work on it, so.
Well, I know that one time we were talking about the art that we were going to purchase, possibly locating it there. So I was just curious about how it's designated.
I think it's a fantastic green space.
Okay.
One way to put it. Okay, I'm gonna go over to 25 here. That just shows you, this is a request that came in from the Air Quality Coalition. If you remember, we entered into an agreement to say that we would support the Air Quality Coalition. We entered an agreement, and then they came back and said, we'd like to have some money. So if you'd like to review that and give them $1,070, there you go. Luckily, our number at this point is lower than most. The city of Austin should be carrying the majority of that impact, but that's something that would come by a council action. It's not a requirement to be in the coalition, if you remember from the presentation. It is a request for funding. Page 26 is the municipal judge position. I did put in here a few of the communities that have the same type of paid judge position with some of the numbers. We have a whole list of 20, 30, maybe even 40 municipal judge salaries, populations, annual cases that we could look at, but we have this page included in here for you. Page 27 is something we've talked about for a couple of years now, a couple of budgets, is a fall concert series. Our desire at some point is to be able to bring in more arts into the community, because we see that we have growing support for music and for arts here in this community. So this is a request to build out a fall concert series with partnering with the high school in terms of having, using the PAC and creating some music performances there. Page 28 and 29 is a request from our fire department. Page 28 is for the Emergency Services District 1 Fire Marshal Interlocal Agreement request. The fire department has requested an update of the interlocal agreement for fire marshal services. Originally, the city handled these services internally, and then they worked with Travis County, and then the city staff decided that we couldn't get the response time we wanted from Travis County, so we partnered with the ESD, who said, hey, we can do this. This would be an excellent partnership. We're right here, makes more sense. Now, as the demand on the ESD has grown, so has their requirements for that department. So they requested an increase in that agreement, which would be an update to an agreement, by the way, of $20,000. Right now, we pay $18,000 a year, I do believe, so then that would change our appropriation from 18
To 38.
to 38,000. Switch over to page 29. This is for emergency management services. Again, historically, the city handled the emergency management services, and we handled that through our police department. The fire department said, hey, we do all these emergency management trainings. All of our guys have multiple certifications. The fire chief has 44 some odd certifications. At this point, our mayor probably has 20, 30, 40 certifications. There's no telling. I mean, you get these certifications by going to these trainings, and they're fantastic, but they take time once you have situations. The fire chief took on those services for a few months, and then, lo and behold, we had an emergency management situation. And it became to be something that took a little bit of time. And if you can imagine, fire chief says, well, I can't do just that during that period of time. I have to manage my ESDs. And so he added a position for emergency services director, brought that person in, has since then laid out a budget and put in the request to the city that the city pay for an emergency operations center, which is currently located in the Casey building, and the emergency management services manager. And that's, the total there is $17,500 to cover both of those. That would also be an interlocal agreement, so we would discuss that. If we got positive feedback from council, we would discuss that as an interlocal at a different council meeting.
And is he looking for money from Jonestown and the whole rest
Yes,
of his
so-
area that he covers?
Jonestown and Point Venture are both in the discussions. There's not a separate from the unincorporated areas, but
Okay.
they're Jonestown and Point Venture, yes. Switching over to page 30, this is a city signage. The reason this is in here is because we've talked about this for probably 5 years or so at the least. And so the conversation comes up as a council. For 2 years, we've talked about having a community forum to decide directional signage, city signage. Do we change the logo? Do we put up new signs showing people what they're seeing when they're coming in? This gives us basically earmarks a dollar figure for, do we want to move forward with this process? Council could say, yes, we want to move forward, but we do not want to earmark the dollars at this time. Great. We can still move forward with the process if council says, let's start engaging the community on how we're going to develop out a city. Now that we've effectively moved through the scenic city process, and we know that we are gold status, we waited because we want to keep that mindful. There are certain things that we're going to restrict us in terms of we're not just going to put this massive beacon of light shining in the air with a bat signal that says, we are amazing. But something lower would be nice that says we're amazing and just goes out, nice guy compliant. So that's something, again, we want to see what our direction is in terms of we want to work on that now. Switch over to 31, we're almost on the white pages. You see over 31, that's art and public spaces. We started a few projects the last 3 years. We have the windmill, we have the wind spiral, we have the local artist piece that we will have in our possession in October when it finishes its current commission. This gives us an earmark of $12,500 to look at additional art for public spaces program here within the city. Shift to 32. This is the OpenGov transparency online portal. If you remember, Mr. Adam Schnall came and gave us a report at our meeting 3 or 4 months back and said, hey, we'd like to do this online portal where you have access to all the city's financial operations that people can look at actively online. They can pull up the website, we enter the information into a database, and everyone can start to play with the city budget and operation dollars to see what happens if, or just says, what do we put into public safety, what do we put into streets? This would be a portal that would do that. We've put this page in here. You see that the total over a 5-year period would be an estimated $93,000. The first year payment would be $29,936, and then the every year would be $15,000 plus or minus. And so this would be the same thing. If council decides, yes, we want to move forward with this, what we would do is we would bring in a few service providers, look at them, and then present that back to council in a streamlined version that says, OpenGov provides this, this, and this, here's the price.
ClearGov.
ClearGov provides this, this, and this, here's their price.
Okay.
And then present that back to council. Then you would decide at that point, want to do it, do we not want to do it? But this is basically that real step of how do we move forward with this. We've told all of these people that have talked to us, we're going to kick it out to budget process so that council collectively says move forward or not.
If we approve the budget or approve this idea, we've approved around 30 grand, right?
If you approve this.
But we
that's what
haven't
you do.
approved the project.
That's right.
We could still decide we don't want to do this after we've heard from,
Yes, sir. We would earmark that dollar figure
Yeah.
for this version, because this is gonna be the Cadillac version, which is beautiful. And then, as you said, we bring the bids in, we bring proposals, council says yes or no. If you don't expend it, we don't use those dollars. Page 33 gets us to a brief update on utility rates. At this point, we are waiting for the utility cost of service study to arrive. So this is the one that's gonna be TBD. As soon as we get that, we will have a presentation back to council just on the specifics of the utility rates. The utility rate is not a utility rate study, it's a utility cost of service. So what the contractor's doing is she's taking our capital improvements projects, she's taking our operating budgets, and she's determining what the actual cost of us delivering services, utility services, to our citizens is, and then we'll have recommendations. When that happens, we'll bring that back. You will note that the joint utility budget this year, the revenues are short approximately $95,000 for the expenditures. So if we were to approve everything the way it was presented in a draft, then we would have to appropriate $95,000 from the reserve to cover the expected expenditures for the year. If the rates stay the same and if everything that, all the assumptions we've made are consistent.
So the impact fee study is part of this?
Impact fee study is next. Once we finish the cost of service study, then we'll go into the impact fee study.
Okay.
So that page 34 just shows you the comparisons on the rates from 17 and 18. That's just so you've got that in your system and you're able to look at that and be aware that when we get to that cost of service results, we'll present them to you. Page 35 shows you that Waste Connections, that's our solid waste provider, they requested an increase for the year. The total estimated increase would be $5,315, or a 0.8% increase for solid waste collection services. You'll see on there, we recommended that we just eat that increase and not pass that along to our service, to our customers at this point, based on the revenues and expenditures projections.
Gotcha.
Page 36 is the last page for this section. It says, as I mentioned earlier, building improvements. This is just a general. You're already doing a building projects plan. You're looking at things that we need. This just says the best case scenario is for us to be able to bring items back to council. We have a building improvement section in the budget. Maybe we earmark a small amount there. Maybe we just leave it for if something happens, then we're able to come back. But different buildings are going to need different improvements. This building, I've now learned, has 3 HVAC units. Apparently, they mess up as often as they want. And so we know that's repair, replacement. We need to be more cost effective. We want to get ahead of it so we're not spending all these dollars on repair when we should be doing a systematic replacement that is more efficient.
Have you put any of that into the budget?
We have a small section into the budget for operations. What we'll do is, once we figure out this analysis here and on another building, we're gonna bring that back to you at the next meeting. It just tells you what those numbers are.
And have you thought about speed of computer, internet speed and all that
Thought
stuff?
about it, just decided, we'll just sit there and wait 10 minutes per page and just stop using the internet.
Okay.
IT has some system improvements included in their budget,
Okay,
and they have capital improvements.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay.
in the system.
okay.
So we're gonna hit these other sections, we're almost there. This next section, which is page 37, 38, 39, this is a 10-year financial statement. This is your quickest point of reference page that I think you've got in the document. This will show you your general fund expenditures, it'll show you revenues, it'll show you fund balances, it'll show you property valuation for the last 12 years. It's called a 10-year financial analysis, but if the page can fit 12 years on it, we're giving you all 12 years. Come next year, we'll delete a row and we'll only have what we have, but this is the size font that you can read it. And so you're able to look at these numbers. A couple things that I'll just mention is that property valuation you'll see over a 12, 13-year period. That's what I said, that's doubled from 500 million to now the 1 billion. The sales tax revenue over that period has effectively doubled from 250,000 to 500,000. Franchise tax from 200,000 to 500,000. So you see those revenues showing some increase it's all based on the growth, the number of users that are coming in that pay for services. We shift over to page 40, then to 41. That's community support. A lot of people ask, what are the things we're putting back for our groups? That lists out 2 different numbers in terms of your community support funding, sometimes listed as non-departmental funding. There's items on the top that have been funded this year that we've put back in for consideration by council. And then, on the bottom, the Chamber of Commerce, Lago Fest, and Lago Radio, we put those numbers down there as well because that's all part of community support. Okay, page 43 through the end of that page, through, the next one's gonna be the consolidated statement. So you're gonna be able to look at the consolidated statement, 43 through 51, and that's gonna show you those departmental expenditures, and this is the statement that we put out there, as well on monthly. When you look at some of these numbers, you can look at the consolidated statement and see where we're at. That's gonna show you a month to date on expenditures, a fantastic document to use. This is where you'll start looking at those hard numbers to see what the fund balance is, what the revenues are for the year, what the proposed expenditures are for the year, and then how those revenues and expenditures impact the fund balance for each fund. Yes, sir.
Question on the chart. These are the red numbers or data. And to the year-end estimate, it says YTD 6/30/19, and you get a list of numbers. Is that the year-end estimate or the?
Year to date.
As I see it.
It's as of the 6/30/19. It's only year to date. It's not a full
Okay.
year-end estimate.
And the percentage is the percent spent as of 6/30.
Yes,
Those numbers are all over the place.
that's a typical.
Well, okay, I understand what they mean.
So good point. Just know when you're looking at that, instead of thinking that's gonna be the end of the year estimate or the number, that's just to that date. 6/30. And that's as of the financial statement there. When you flip over to page 52 and the ensuing pages from 52 through page 98, this is actually you're gonna have the budgets for each account. So you're gonna start out with the general fund revenues. All right, so what's my mic there? You'll go general fund revenues, and then you're gonna go into expenditures on each department. So for example, you'll have admin, and you'll have the same thing that you're seeing on that consolidated statement, where we're showing you the year-end actual for FY 17, year-end actual for 18, the budget for 19, the year-end estimate as of 6/30, all consistent, and then you're gonna have your 3-year budget projections for FY 20, FY 21, FY 22. You're gonna have that for 40 pages. So that'll take you to be able to compare what we're looking at.
Gotcha.
We go into page 99, for the next few pages, you're gonna look at 99 through 114, you're gonna look at debt service, and you're gonna have a consolidated statement for our debt service fund, and then you're gonna have individual breakdowns for the $33+ million of bond debt. And that's clearly laid out per obligation. All those pages include information on each of the bonds.
None of them are higher than 3.6? Well,
I would
that's,
say
I
the
think that,
17 is
And here's
still
the guy
higher than
that they
that.
can't hear.
Close. Page 115 is gonna take you into the capital improvement program. You're gonna see a brief explanation of the capital improvement program, which tells you this is a 5-year plan for how we're doing, it sounds crazy, capital improvements. And so on each of those items, the interesting thing you're looking at on page 118, that's the FY 20 number. That'll show you $7.2 million that are in capital improvement program dollars for next year. Of that, 3.1 million comes from general fund balance, 21,000 comes from utility fund balance, and 248,000 comes from impact fees. The remaining comes from bond. So those are the dollars that will be there. That's what we were saying earlier, we gotta make sure that we're planning for these items moving forward. One thing we've changed a little bit this year, a couple of these projects had already been funded, but we haven't completed those projects, so we're making sure to put that on FY 20 so that you see the project here and keep it in our forethought that it's happening. So we've got it in progress, it's in the capital budget.
So the CIP projects that have already been funded or in the works, does that number reflect what's left or what the original cost was?
So if we've already zeroed it, if we've already spent half of it,
Yeah.
there's additional dollar, the other half's gonna be included in,
Well, but that, you won't show the total cost, you'll just show what's left.
show what we would be doing for that project. So for example, if you look at the impact fee study, even though we said, yes, let's get that done, nothing's happened on it, there's $45,000. We could have just left it out there because you've already got it approved by the council. Since we're not doing it until we finish the other study, that's $45,000 you're seeing in its entirety for that item. So that'll go through page 122, and that's full 5 years of capital. And then when you go into 123, this is something you've hardly ever seen before. This is an improved street improvement plan. There's a brief explanation on it. Page 125 and 126 tells you how the street improvement plan was developed. Then when you get into page 127, these pages, 127 through 137, take you through 582 streets, and the small task of fixing those streets, maintaining those streets, and keeping them so that they're slightly navigatable.
Is this an order of priority, or?
I'd say it's a pretty big priority.
I mean,
Is the
first one the top of the list?
So it's on scoring. So you look at the score based
Oh.
on,
Yeah,
it includes different factors.
Right.
We might have to make them larger so we read them easier.
Yeah.
It includes factors in terms of total amount of traffic on the street, current condition of the street, drainage on the street. So we measure those out. But remember earlier too, the comment is, we don't want to, if we have 3 streets that score really high and all 3 of those are right off of boggy, if they're in the same vicinity, we don't want to say that we do all 3 of those at the same time for traffic flow reasons. So, and we're actually going to walk through the street plan too. That's going to be one of our task items.
is the scoring on here?
Yes, sir. The scoring
I can't
goes
read it.
over to page, the 3rd column from the right.
Okay,
It shows you a readiness score.
okay.
So there are a few pages that include these streets, and it shows you an estimated start date on those. So if you start at the top and go down, in theory, that's your priority in order of when they can be done. Again, we need to make sure we're handling traffic flow. Okay, you switch over to 138. That is, as we already said, that's your budget calendar. It shows you the dates. As of right now, it shows that we are scheduled for council to consider the final budget by September 19th. That's the entire document. Walk through, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. As this is a public meeting, I have to open it up for comments from the public. We have 5 minutes. Is there anybody who would like to make a quick comment or ask a question? Yes, sir.
Kevin Sullivan, 3923 Alpha Post Place. Last year, when we went through this process, one of the things we asked about was a transportation study. And I think we gave direction we wanted to be done. I could swear that Josh said it was in the budget and it would be done, and my understanding is, I don't even know if it's been commissioned yet. So it'd be nice to have an update on kind of what the scoop is on that.
All right.
Thanks.
That's on my list.
Mayor, I believe I'm looking at a CIP program.
Next year, the 21.
Switching over to page 118. I know we've discussed it, we've looked at it, it definitely has not been fully commissioned and gone through a program yet. I'm looking, I
I
apologize.
didn't see it either.
It's not there.
Yeah, I don't see it, Mayor.
But, and Josh, the reason why I'm asking is that I'd asked repeatedly, is it in the budget, in the operational budget for 18-19? And I'm pretty sure the answer I got was yes. And so I'm just kind of curious why that was never instigated. Because to me, it's vital tool, we're trying to figure out, how you can budget, especially around the streets and traffic.
Right.
Well, I
I
can tell
don't
you
have
something.
18, 19 in front of me, so
Yeah, I can give you a simple answer, is call it a vital tool looking at it, but part of it's in our, if we're talking about streets, we're looking at how we're controlling the traffic based on the streets, and then looking at our individual traffic impact analysis too, to see how that's happening. But we did discuss it, and I know we've got an answer somewhere, so it'll be something that I can provide an update to council on.
Gotcha. Yeah, come
the
on.
transportation plan. Is that what you called it, transportation plan?
Transportation study, updated transportation study.
Ron Smith, 20609 Oak Ridge. What's the effective rollback rate taxes?
Tell you when the tax sheet comes out.
Generally, it's around 8%.
Tell you when it comes out.
If one has comments on multiple pages, such that you don't want to take up everybody's time at a council meeting, how do we provide that information to the city? In other words, I may have quite a few things to ask questions on. I don't know that we need to bother everybody with everything, but is there a way to submit a list of questions, concerns, considerations? How do we do that?
Well, let me ask you a question, Ron. Why can't you just sit down with Josh and get all your questions
I'm just
answered?
asking
And, no, I'm just asking if this is an acceptable process to meet,
I'm willing to do that.
and then, once you get your questions answered, then come and talk with us.
Okay?
I mean,
I would say, start with, you can email any or all of us if you want.
Oh, yeah.
With your city manager being the priority, see if it requires having a sit-down one-to-one to have your questions answered. And then if there's anything that you also think that the public needs to see, make sure you also bring those questions to one of our public hearings, and have it answered and addressed
Yeah.
there. So you can do both.
Go out of home with this. Okay. Thank you.
Well, and Ron, any one of us would meet with you too, but,
I'm just
You know.
trying to figure out what the process
Okay.
is, that's all.
Okay.
I mean, this is like the second year budget review. I think you did one last year, and then this is the second one. So
right.
it's evolving,
Right.
and we have new councils now. And I don't know how much you want to get in the weeds or how much you don't want to get in the weeds. Some people do, some people don't. I'm a detail guy, so I get in the weeds. And some of that's not, you really don't want to tap a lot of YouTube time with that.
And on your first question, the Senate Bill 2 has not taken effect. That starts 1 January. So the effective,
Caps,
yes.
tax
So,
caps.
so the rollback for this fiscal year is still 8%.
So we're on the old rules.
We're still on the same rules of 8%. Next year is when most of the state will go to the 3.5% mandatory rollback, elections, stuff like that. But then there's, we're under 30,000 people, so we have some exceptions. So,
Okay. All right, thank you.
but we're still under 8% right now.
Mayor, I'll reiterate what we started at the very beginning. The process, to encourage everybody, especially someone listening or somebody here, is send us an email, come in, give us a call. We can talk over the phone, we can sit down. That's the most important process, is to allow people to provide input, ask questions, and we can flip through and find things to answer those. And then for us, we want to bring these comments back to at least make a statement in the public that we've addressed some topics with our citizens. So we'll just make sure we keep a running list of those comments.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have 5:30, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the, what do we call this? The budget
Special counsel.
special called meeting. We call the meeting adjourned, 5:30.
Do we
And
get a break between now and executive session, or do we? go
yes,
right into-
I'll allow everybody to take a break. Let's say, it's 10 minutes good, 5:40?